You're listening to the Changing Normal podcast, where we strive to outdo the old normal and reject the new normal. And now your hosts, Owen, Dan, and Ben.
All right, welcome back to the Changing Normal podcast. Welcome back to the Changing Normal podcast. We're on episode 27. Owen just had to count me in because my timing is so great. This is the 10th of November. And Dan and I are hanging out together tonight. And we got Owen as well. We got a few things on the docket tonight. We're going to, as normal, talk about some of the things we learned or things we did this past week. We're also going to talk a little bit about kind of the craziness going on in crypto land or Bitcoin, everything going on with FTX and different things like that. And then I don't think we have any listener feedback this week, at least from what I can see. So we're just going to kind of going to have a little bit of a chat about some of those things and see where it goes. So, Owen, you want to start us off with this past week?
Yeah, this week has been a crazy week for work. So I haven't done a ton, but I did get my greenhouse water system all drained. It's not cold, but we had one night where it dropped below freezing and my pump for the system sits outside. So I was a little bit nervous about it. So I just quickly disconnected that and yanked it out. And I still have to go put a compressor on the lines and blow out all the lines and things like that in the greenhouse and running out to the field and stuff. But the basic system or the basic drain down is done. And one thing I don't think I talked about last week, but it actually was something I did last week, which kind of applies, I guess. I discovered the local auction barn and discovered that they do everything online now because of COVID, when they used to have actual in-person auctions. But because of COVID, they stopped doing that. And so they, of course, had to keep their business running. So they use this company that provides online auction services. And they it's just like eBay, really, but a little more primitive. Anyway, so I discovered that and like a month ago and got all set up and watched last week there was an auction. Anyway, there was a lot of pretty awesome stuff on there. And I want to say there must have been 1,500 to 1,600 items in the auction.
Yeah, that's a few.
And I mean, some stuff was kind of junky and whatever. And I didn't go up and actually look at any of it in person, but there's a time you can do that. But there was actually quite a few food items in that auction.
In an auction?
Yeah.
Like processing or actual edible items?
No, edible items. So they get a lot of stuff like Day and Ross, damaged, good stuff that's scratch and dent and drop off a truck or box door open. Yeah. Things that deliver damaged and the receiver won't receive it. Which there's nothing actually maybe wrong with the contents, but or maybe partially wrong with the contents. I'll give you an example. So one of the things we were able to pick up for basically half price of what you buy in the store was cans of pineapple.
Okay, yeah.
So they had 2 sets, like chunks and then pineapple, crushed pineapple. 24 cans in each lot, and I got them for like $35 each or $30 each. So 48 cans for $60 or whatever it was. Mm-hmm. There was one can in one of those lots that was broken. Mm. And in the other lot, there was 2 cans were slightly crushed, but not broken. So that's all that was wrong with it. It was roughly half price if you were to go buy that new in the store.
Right.
Cliff Bars.
Oh,
They were selling cases of Cliff Bars, which retail would be like $360 some dollars, you know. And I picked them up for, I forget if I paid 80 or 90, somewhere right in there. Most of them went in that range.
Are they any good though?
Oh yeah, I like Cliff
depends
Bars.
on who you ask.
Yeah, no, I like Cliff. Yeah, I like them. They're kind of a granola bar type, kind of thing. They're not like a chocolate bar.
Okay.
And they're handy to throw in lunches or whatever.
We have to get set up so I can follow this auction.
Yeah. Now, interestingly enough, they had another one this week, which is actually ending shortly. I didn't get in on any of that stuff. Because Thursday is their auction night. But and we didn't record last Thursday, so that's why we recorded a little bit late last week. So that's why it worked out for me to be on. But there's no food items in it. So it's totally random. You never know what's going to be in these auctions.
Sounds like Martin's or Winners.
Yeah. Yeah, it's almost like one of those kind of places. But it's all online. You can place your bids and like put a maximum bid on it, and it'll just bid up to that amount depending on what other people bid. So you're not overpaying, but you don't have to sit there and watch the whole thing.
Have like 19 tabs open for the things you want to bid on.
Yeah, exactly.
Constantly switching between tabs.
So I don't know, like other stuff, like just like a vacuum. Picked up a vacuum for $80. That was a $400 vacuum, Hoover vacuum. Peanut butter, like natural organic peanut butter that tastes very gross, but is what my wife likes. It's what she likes to eat. So, like a dozen those jars. They're just little jars, but they cost like $9 in the store, and we got 12 of them for $30. So just good deals like that. So I guess that was great. Kind of stock the shelves with some things that maybe we wouldn't normally buy in bulk, but now we have, a lifetime supply of crushed pineapple.
Both the pineapple itself and the can.
We'll do a follow-up on this in 10 years and see if you used all that pineapple.
That's right. So I guess the lesson is, if you look around, you can find that sort of stuff. You don't just have to buy at the grocery store. Sometimes you can find those sorts of deals in kind of odd, unusual places. Yeah. But it's a great way to stock the cupboard with some of those things that maybe you couldn't afford to buy at the grocery store, in A1 condition.
Yeah. So I had a question actually on the greenhouse. I meant to jump in, but you kept rolling.
That's
you
right.
Said your field drainage, so you actually have piping that'll go out past the greenhouse.
Yeah, I have one line that runs from my greenhouse out to my orchard, and then underground, and then from there it pops up above ground, and I run it above ground out the whole length of the field for the chickens, and so all my chicken cages are actually piped directly into that system.
Okay.
So we don't have to carry water out to them. They just have constant water all the time fed from the greenhouse system.
Nice.
Yeah. So that way it saves a lot of lugging, a lot of work. Because we used to have just like a hanging waterer in the cage with a 5-gallon pail on top. Well, let me tell you, 80 chickens in the heat of summer will go through a 5-gallon pail in no time.
Yep.
And that's assuming that it wasn't, leaking or overflowing a little bit, or, all kinds of other little problems you can have with those waterers, those hanging waterers.
Right.
that would drain that 5-gallon pail pretty quick.
Yeah, exactly.
So now I just have them all hooked up on a nipple waterer system.
Okay.
And, yeah.
So is that a low pressure system then?
Yeah, the system in the greenhouse is high pressure, but I have a little pressure regulator on it that drops it down to like 10 or 15 psi or something like that, which works pretty good for the birds.
Okay, nice.
So I just have like a piece of PVC, like, I don't know, 4 feet long with half a dozen little tiny sort of little nipple waterers in them.
Okay.
I've seen some that actually have like a little drinking cup on the bottom, but these ones are just the nipple. They just push on it with their beak and get their water from it that way. And we noticed a huge difference in our survival rate through the summer. Very rarely have lost any birds to heat stroke or anything like that since we did that.
Interesting.
Yeah, made a huge difference because I'm not always around during the day. You know, I'm working and things, so it's hard for me to be the one to water them 3 times a day. And, you know, it's hard for the kids to lug the water out. And it simplified the whole thing, even though moving the cages is a little more complicated because you've got hoses attached to them.
Okay. So you got to kind of drag the hose behind?
Yeah, usually what I do is I try to pull the main hose sort of out in a big loop and then come back. So as the cages are moving down, you're moving the kind of into the hose. And then I have like a splitter with 2 24-foot hoses going to my 2 cages. You just kind of like flop them ahead of the cage. And then when you move it, you're not like straining and kinking the hose and stuff.
Yeah.
That's it. The only thing I find with that a system I have to watch is if you have something malfunction. This year, next year I'm going to go through and replace all the nipples because they've been used for quite a few years. And so they're getting a little, you know, kind of bleached out in the sun and the plastic is not as sturdy as it used to be. And so I've had a few actually break off because they got brittle. And then, of course, it sits there blowing water out, you know, a 1/4 inch or 3/8 hole.
Sprinkler system for the chickens.
Yeah, and which over the course of a few hours uses quite a significant amount of water out of the system, which then, you know, I don't have a lot of water here in the property, so I have to be quite smart with it. But yeah, no, it works pretty good. The other thing I'm probably going to do with that line that runs over there, because the birds don't use a huge amount of volume, but it's a 3/4 inch line. I'm going to probably tee off the line next year in the orchard and actually try to run some drip irrigation to the orchard to try to keep that a little more irrigated next year.
Always got to be thinking.
Yeah, I really should have run
it set up, even though a lot of years we don't need it.
Yeah.
Still, that the year that you do need it,
That's right.
Such a difference.
Yeah, that's right. And I probably should have run a bigger line, a 1-inch line, so that I could expand that system. Anything I do on that 3/4 inch line, I probably would have to stage my watering. So if I was doing rows of plants, that line wouldn't be able to handle doing all of them at once. So I'd actually have to kind of rig up a system where either it was manual or if I was going to automate it, that they did it in stages, not all at once, so that the supply was okay. But that's not hard to do. I just have to run a communications wire out there from my greenhouse. So I have the system all set up in the greenhouse for timing and all that. It's because the greenhouse is already set up to automatically water all the beds inside the greenhouse. So that's set up. Those are drip tape and solenoids control that. And they're all wired back to a central timer. Well, that timer has got like 24, at least 24 slots, like different times that you could set. like different zones, I guess, if you want to call it that.
Mm-hmm.
And I only run 3 in the greenhouse. So I could wire all of, a whole bunch of more zones out in the orchard or in a field or whatever, and wire it all back to that. And then it's just one place where I can set the amount of time I want each one to water, and it'll just fire them off, one line. And then when it's done, it fires the next one and runs it. And it would just keep going.
Okay.
So my infrastructure is all there. I just have to, do the work to add to it.
It's an interesting thing to think about because it makes me wonder how often we just kind of build a system to just kind of get us through the whatever situation or the plan we have coming in. Oftentimes that's what's normal, but then it takes another step and a little bit more of expansion of thought process and what you have as far as plans to build with that allowance for expansion.
Yeah, you definitely want to go into that sort of thing with the big picture in mind, if possible. And if you have this idea of, well, here's what I want, best case scenario. And if I was designing permaculture systems for people, I've not done this well myself in my own property, ironically enough, but if I was doing it for someone else, the first question I would ask is, what do you want? Ideally, perfect scenario, no budget. Like, what do you want ultimately?
Mm-hmm.
And then you start from there, and then you start working backwards, going, can we make this modular that you can get to that eventually? By doing it in stages. Because then your infrastructure layout, you can spend a little more now on things, but save money in the long run.
Yeah.
You buy
the overarching plan, but you don't have to lay out
right.
for all the hardware right at the beginning.
Exactly. You can buy the timer that does more than what you need now because you need it eventually, right? But it's not a huge expense.
Mm-hmm.
Later, it would be more expensive because you'd buy a smaller timer now and a bigger timer later. Right?
I was just about to say, is that similar to the buy nice or buy twice saying?
Yeah, it's kind of like that.
Would so you said modular. Does that allow for is that the most common way to do it, or is that or is it possible to kind of build on a small scale with elements of everything that is desired in the future? Is the modular more favorable because you can focus on one thing versus getting started on all of the elements?
Yeah, obviously it's situationally dependent, but if you're just starting out at something and maybe you're not an expert at it, you don't want to take on too much. I see a lot of people try to do too much when they first come to homesteading, for example, and they just burn right out because their chickens are dying and their, goats are running all over the place because they don't have proper fencing, and their garden is full of weeds, and they're trying to do everything, but they haven't developed the efficiencies, through practice and experience to do anything well. And so sometimes you need to focus on small things and get good at that and learn that, and then add, to that. Like we grow a lot of vegetables. We have a big garden. And it's work, but we don't really focus on that so much because we've done it in our entire lives.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I was helping in the garden when I was 5-6 years old, pulling weeds. So for some of us, we've been our entire lives have been doing this, and it's second nature to put stuff in the ground and have it grow and know what it needs and do what you have to do. So now our focus of our energy and attention, while we still have to do those things every year, can be on other projects, expansions, new things, adding this component or that component, or let's try this different in this area, and we have the energy, we don't have to focus on the gardening so much. It's kind of second nature.
Mm-hmm.
But if we tried to do this, start it with never having done it, we would have to just focus on the gardens. There's no way we could do the rest of it. There's too much to learn and focus on mentally to include all the other stuff. So like start with, laying hens, and figure out laying hens, and then a year down the road or 2 years, add maybe a small garden, and then add some meat chicken. So you add things modular instead of if you don't have the experience. If you have the experience, or the people who can support you who have the experience, you can do more faster.
Yeah, definitely. That's something I've noted. It's easy to get carried away. I have a lot of enthusiasm for having all the different things, whether it's berry plants or the chickens or whatever it might be. You can add up a lot more things than you can actually take care of, and so it's like, the raspberry canes die because there's no time to make sure they establish properly, things like that. So it definitely does make sense to add as you actually have time, or I guess master and then add.
Yeah.
Don't add everything that you need to master before you've got there.
And you might get to the point of going, I can't add anymore. I don't have time. I don't have time. I don't have the resources. And maybe you have to then prioritize and say, well, actually, this thing I want to add is more important than something I'm doing now. I need to drop what I'm doing now, outsource what I'm doing now, whatever you have to do to make your homestead the most efficient as far as production. I know we've certainly run into that where we're trying to do too much. We're trying to do everything and go, well, we can't do everything. You can do everything if it's your full-time job and you're subsisting off of your homestead, like it's, 1750 or something like that. But that's not the world we live in these days. I see so many people come to the homestead lifestyle and go, so how are we going to make money off this? Immediately, before they've ever planted a vegetable. You go, hold on. That's really not what modern homesteading is, that you're going to somehow walk in and live off what you're doing.
Yeah.
You can get there. People do it. But you're not, it's not the typical way. Most people, it's a lifestyle they want in addition to having a full-time job that pays the mortgage and things like that.
Yeah, I would say that is the best way to experiment with it, kind of try it out. Because if you go 100% in on the homesteading, you better be ready to have no cash flow.
Well, there is a cash flow, it's just not in. So.
Yeah, it's out.
Oh man. Dan, you?
I guess the biggest thing I did this week was I did concrete today. I got sonotubes in the holes. This was for my deck, the backyard. I bought the house with a deck and then had to pull it off the house. That was a year ago, so it's still been sitting detached, unused, kind of looking a little odd and misplaced out in my backyard. So I was like, okay, I probably should get that back somewhere usable. I'm not going to attach it directly to the house again, although I'm sure we could have reinstalled it correctly with proper flashing so that it didn't grout the wall out. I was just like, skip that potential spot for breakdowns, and I'll just have it a little bit further away from the house. So I needed another row of concrete pillars since one edge won't be attached to the house. So 3 more of those. I found ledge was quite shallow in my backyard, so not much past 3 feet deep. So should still work though. So I got that, and got some bags of Quickcrete, and I was like, oh yeah, I'll just do this in the wheelbarrow by hand. It's not worth running over the farm and getting the mixer. What a terrible decision.
Yep.
Always go for mechanization if it's available.
Well, I mean, you know my house, obviously, and it's a cordwood house. A lot of mortar in this house, all mixed by hand in the wheelbarrow, because it's so thick that you can't mix it in a cement mixer.
Wow. Yeah,
Because
I guess you have to
it
have
just
it
sticks to the side.
so you put it in place and it can't move, right? So it can't
Yeah,
move
that's
around
right.
at all.
It's almost like plasticine, and you just mold it around the log. But it's so thick, like if you try to mix it in a cement, it just sticks to the side of the cement mixer and just goes round and round. It doesn't actually mix up. So, yeah. So the only way to really do it is in a wheelbarrow with a hoe. Chop it back and forth, walk around to the other side, chop it back the other way, walk back around, chop it back. Oh, I've done so many loads of those.
Yeah, I was glad it was only 12 bags. So that was enough. In hindsight, anything more than 3 bags, I'm going to run and get a mixer for. Like 3 wasn't bad. After that, it was not fun.
Funny how you start adding things. It's like, oh, this will be fine. Another one, this is okay. Another one, this is not so okay. This is definitely not fine.
What about you, Ben?
So we got hit with an out of the blue project at work. So it's been 4:30, 5 o'clock mornings and running past dark, which is, it's regular farm / homestead hours, but us government workers aren't super used to it unless there's a forest fire. But
right.
There was a confirmed strain of rabies positive. The raccoon strain within our district. So that then requires that we set up a 5-kilometer radius perimeter, and we set up several hundred traps, and we just trap and cull everything that we catch, and then send that to Fredericton to the vet lab for testing. But the main focus.
Dan, do you have a gun handy just in case you're in the show? He starts frothing at the mouth or anything. If he starts turning, you can take him down.
Beforehand, I didn't have time to prepare.
You guys said you like surprises, so there you go.
So you've got me wondering now, how does working at the lab go? They just have like 100 dead skunks show up, or
well, thankfully there was only 3 skunks today. It wasn't too smelly. Well, it shows up, as far as I know, it shows up. They examine the body of the animal, and then what they need to test for the rabies virus is the brain and spinal fluid. So they'll decapitate it and carefully remove the skull cap off, and actually test the brain matter. They'll do like a rapid test in the local vet lab, then they actually ship it to Ottawa to get it very thoroughly tested. But it kind of got me thinking about the mentality of the people who had it, or not the people who had rabies, but the people who had the raccoon that had rabies, because they apparently it was found, and then it also something happened, and they were approached by some officers, I think, or something like that, but they then denied that they had it. They said, "Oh, it's just out and about and running around," but then it bit one of them twice. It bit someone else twice, and but the mentality of like, okay, you could possibly. I mean, some people just don't understand that raccoons just carry rabies. But like the mentality behind, okay, we're dealing with a potentially deadly virus to humans. Wow, this sounds familiar. No, it doesn't.
Did you make the raccoon wear a mask and social distance?
It's impossible. They're gregarious animals. They like other raccoons and other raccoons. But like, okay, so it's a legitimately potentially deadly virus to humans, and we're not going to tell / maybe we're going to hide it. Like, I don't understand where what the mental frame is for why that would be. Like, I don't know if it's just, we don't want our neighbors to hate us, or
Well, that's how the zombie apocalypse starts, doesn't it?
Rabies virus?
No, not from the rabies virus, but from not telling people. Someone's sick and you don't tell anybody, or the virus escapes from the lab and they don't want to tell anybody, and then it just goes rampant.
The virus escaped from the lab. My goodness, that sounds familiar too. But that's misinformation. Oh, okay, PayPal's going to take money out of my account. But so aside from that's going to be a 2-week project, so going to be right up straight for the next 2 weeks. Also got the last raft of lumber, hopefully, for the addition. So that's gonna have to go up hopefully before the snow flies, but we shall see. If not, I'll just get some Tyvek paper and close up the back door so the wind doesn't whistle through it. But yeah, relatively straightforward week. I've been super out of the loop with anything crypto, Bitcoin, sometimes even world news related with the last week or so. But so you guys are gonna have to really kind of fill me in a little bit on this whole FTX situation, what's going on there.
Yeah. Well,
break it down for me like I'm 5.
Yeah, that's good, because that might be the best I can do. It's really confusing, and I'm not even sure that everyone has all the information. And so, because obviously some of this deals with a company's finances, and that's not necessarily completely public or visible,
right?
In every case, or how their business model is running. But people who know a lot more than I do seem to have kind of, explained it quite well, I thought. I won't do their explanation justice, that's for sure. But basically, FTX was a crypto exchange, and they have sort of like a lot of exchanges, big exchanges, they have their international exchange, and then they have a US-based exchange. Now, I read tonight before the show that none of the US customers were affected, and the US exchange part was not affected. It has 100% liquidity.
Really?
It was only the international side that was affected.
Okay, that's interesting. Because FTX, I'm just checking in here to see. I think FTX is the means by which you can purchase crypto through Exodus, is it not?
Yeah.
Are they one of the partners? Because I think Exodus uses more than one third-party exchange.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that.
There is an FTX tab in the profile page of.
Okay.
So I knew that name from somewheres.
Right. So, but the other thing FTX did was they offered loans to people. So they were also acting sort of as a shadow bank.
They were, I guess that's called decentralized finance, or DeFi.
Yes.
Right? When they set
That's
up
right.
whether it's smart contracts or loans in the traditional sense, where the company's just maintaining an internal ledger.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that, I think it is that side of it that got them in the most trouble. And I haven't really been able to figure out what was the exact thing that sort of precipitated the whole breakdown.
Mm-hmm.
But basically what happened was there was a run on the exchange where people were trying to withdraw their crypto. And that led to liquidity problems. I suspect this all happened because of their own token. So they had their own token. Well, it's a little more complicated than that. There was sort of a sister company that was a separate legal entity, but they were sort of tied together, and it has its own token. And I think it was over leveraged on its token. It was basically borrowing money against the collateral they held in their own token.
Okay.
And then when the price of that dropped, they had to, because people were trying to sell it, they had to start buying it themselves to prop up the price of that token. And I think that has sort of led what sort of started the snowball rolling, which then made people nervous about the exchange, which led to people trying to withdraw their crypto. And they had like Sunday, I think they had $6 billion worth of crypto trying to be
that would collapse.
Withdrawn or something like that in
Anything,
one day. So yeah, I need to try to pull up this guy's Twitter because he talks a little bit. So the owner, basically the CEO of FTX, has since basically today has come out with a bunch of tweets to sort of try and clarify some things.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not really sure how well he clarified, and he might have just made it even more confusing.
It may have been obfuscation, not clarification.
Yeah, basically taking full responsibility for it, which was kind of interesting. Yeah, so they were... Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say the situation with collateral is interesting. I mean, that's an accepted way of, I guess, obtaining loans is using some form of collateral. But I've seen, I think it was Terra Luna went down due to an issue with collateral, and definitely it seems like there should be some basic like rules of thumb for how you go about using your own stock basically as collateral. And also how much of it you're relying on, because once you start getting called on some of it, the mere act of selling it takes the market price down, which means the total value of the collateral is going down, which means you have to sell more of it. and it's a negative feedback loop, I guess you'd call that.
Yeah. Well, and also the fact that this token that they created is just, it's not a sound money. It's just, I don't know the whole, I think it's FTT, I think is the token, the name of the token. Anyway, I don't know all the ins and outs of that token, but presumably it's something that probably doesn't have a hard cap. That is something that they can produce as they need and all of that.
Exchange tokens are generally like, they're totally centralized and controllable.
So that's a major issue, because if you're using something that's not sound as collateral, then you're really opening yourself up to the loss of value in the collateral you're using. And so you can quickly get into a situation where your collateral is worth a lot less than your loans. And
it sounds like the equivalent of like Canadian Tire going to the bank with a big stack of their own Canadian Tire bills and trying to use that as collateral for an operating loan.
Yeah.
I don't think it's something that would be accepted in traditional finance.
A Canadian Tire money or collateral system?
I'm trying to find this guy's post, but anyway.
All right,
Yeah.
interesting.
I mean,
Yeah, so
exchange tokens, it's all well and good when it's used like a rewards point system, which everybody has a rewards point system now. It's like every gas station and
Right.
in the grocery store, the hardware store. It's like most of them seem to be on some sort of rewards point system, but it's never something that could be a threat to the business itself because of all the web of financial attachments that come up. It's always something that's just more consumer data tracking. They give you a little bit back, and then you can only spend it with the company.
Yeah.
For an exchange to basically treat it like it's much more valuable than it is, as if it had absolute value and more than just a trinket. That's definitely something you need to look at, and maybe something as an analysis of exchange and the quality of the business they're running, like what they're doing with their own token. It's maybe something that there should be more reporting on. Of course, that's generally not public.
Right.
Yeah.
So this is yet another attempt at DeFi that seems to have gone belly up.
Mm-hmm. Well,
what? No, go ahead.
Well, was this decentralized though?
Okay, that's a fair question.
I mean, they may use the DeFi term as a the hot catchphrase or whatever, but it doesn't sound like it was decentralized. I don't know. Maybe that is just a marketing gimmick. The whole DeFi.
I think a lot
term.
of it is. I think a lot of it is. Yeah. I think part of the problem was they ran out of like actual dollar reserves because they were buying back so much of their own token in order to prop up the price of it to stay not over leveraged, to stay properly leveraged, that they just ran out of money.
I guess that's about the situation. Every country is in keeping their own currency afloat.
Yeah,
it's like they can do it as long as they have enough US dollar reserves to start buying back their currency in a pinch.
Well, and this is the thing. See, a bank, okay, an exchange or anyone doing DeFi that's doing loans with crypto collateral isn't like a regular bank where they are backed by the Fed.
Right.
And they'll be bailed out by the lender of last resort, the Federal Reserve, who can just create the money. You don't have that in a situation with a I don't know what you call them.
I don't know, an unregulated.
Yeah,
basically.
I guess it's. I mean, they follow certain regulations, I'm sure, but it is an unregulated bank. They're not backed by the Fed in the same way that a conventional legacy bank is.
Well, I should maybe clarify that many exchanges, if they have US dollar reserves, for example, for an American-based exchange, those would be covered under, FDIC?
Yes.
Insurance. But only for the US dollar deposits, not for any crypto deposits.
That's right. Yes, that's my point. Is that they're not backed in the same way, and so
yeah, no one's insuring crypto deposits. That's not a thing.
No, that's right. And so they have to be. They're generating a much higher risk through the loans they're doing that involve crypto. Because of that. Whereas a regular bank only deals in dollars, and so there's not nearly the risk to them of being leveraged improperly. I don't think.
That's a really good thing to note, because how do you even set up a crypto based, deposit and lending system, when you don't have that protection that you would have if you're working with a government currency, where you have that government insurance, where your deposit is basically being guaranteed by the government up to a certain amount, I believe. I don't think if you have $50 million deposited at the bank and they go under, that you get it all back. But for any smaller depositors, for the average working person, if the bank goes under, the government is going to make sure the depositors get their money back. That was kind of the system that was set up. So crypto, I don't think you can even compete in that space to try and set up a deposit and loaning system, because it's so far from I hate to use the word fair playing field, but it's like you're definitely not in the same ballpark. You have no method where you can guarantee depositors will get their funds back in the event of a catastrophic failure.
Well, that's if you have a failure of the system that loses it,
basically a bank run,
right,
or a banking failure if they go belly up.
Yeah.
So that is, I guess it's kind of
I think that's
of the current
somewhat
banking system is they do at least have that level of insurance.
Yes.
Offered by the government, basically government protection.
Right. Which really is just creating more of it. So in a sense, it's the same thing. The difference is with the dollar, you have an entire economy and government backing it. Whereas with a smaller entity like a business, even a very large business, $1 billion business, they can't take the same sort of stress on the system that the U.S. economy can take. You know what I mean? Backed by a Federal Reserve. There's a lot more cushion there for the Federal Reserve to do the same thing that these entities are doing by printing their own tokens to back whatever their business model is, their loans and stuff. I think you could do that sort of a system, but you have to base it on something sound. I mean, at one time you would have seen banks backing everything they did with gold, like with an actual hard asset. And they would have had their own collateral to loan against. And that was the limit of what they could loan. If you're not leveraged.
Oh, you almost said
it. Almost said what?
The F word, the fractional reserve.
Yeah. If you're not fractionally reserved, but you know what I mean? Like if you're not leveraged, you can basically cover everything that you owe with what you have in reserve, right? Mm-hmm. That's the idea of it. To not be fractionally reserved. I mean, at least part of it. I can't find this. I'm annoyed because I had all of these tweets all lined up and then something happened and they're gone, and now I can't find them again because Twitter is stupid. No sense. It makes no sense whatsoever. It's the worst platform I've ever dealt with. So annoying. Anyway.
The customer service, they were all laid off as well, so...
Yeah. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, that's right.
No, the CEO actually had it laid out, basically saying, here's where I thought we were leveraged at, which was 0. Here's where we actually were leveraged at, and I didn't know that. And that was apparently part of the problem, obviously. So, stepping back from this, I mean, unless there's something else you want to say on it, but what's the lesson?
No, I think we've the lesson.
Like, I'm not qualified to get into the minutia of the step-by-step thing that happened. Basically, there was a run on this exchange. They couldn't cover everything that they had. People started selling off their token. They started buying their token in order to prop up the price because that's what they were using for collateral for their loans. and then snowballed from there into being insolvent, essentially. Then there's the whole side of it, Binance saying they were going to buy it, which is another giant exchange, and then backing out. And like, this is an ongoing saga story of, what's going to happen. And the CEO, certainly in his tweets at least, seems apologetic and sincere and attempting to help all of his people, all of his, creditors, customers, everybody, to make sure everybody gets their money. But, yeah. He lives in the Bahamas.
It's hard to tax them there, apparently.
Yeah.
I think the biggest takeaway is going back to basic Bitcoin security is, not your keys, not your coin. And we've kind of hit on this multiple times before. The whole point of Bitcoin is to allow for the self-custody of your money, and not relying on that third party. And we see with this, you have to be especially careful where it's still kind of the Wild West. New technology, a lot of things happening, over regulation, and a lot of unknowns where it's still a new space, that you should probably be very careful about getting tied to any of these companies, because some of them are going to go under. So hold your own Bitcoin.
Well, and it's going to be interesting to see, because one of the things that has been, I don't want to know if predicted is the right term, but the hope for Bitcoin as an asset is that you'll be able to hold this asset and then borrow against it, use it as collateral. I mean, that's one of the things that people anticipate you will be able to do in the future, which allows you to not have to sell it, but also profit from it. But the difference is you're holding the asset yourself, right? That you're backing your borrowing on. And it's a sound asset. Right. It's not a token that just could be created willy-nilly.
So what's it going, like, do you guys have any idea of what it's going to take to reach that point? Like, do you think we have the technology or the means to do that? Or is it still something that might be down the road?
Loaning against Bitcoin?
That's held in your own custody.
I think there are some examples of smart contracts.
Smart contracts and multi-sig wallets. So the multi-sig wallet thing,
I have heard of that.
That's going to be pretty critical, I think, because that allows you to still control your Bitcoin, but also to have a company involved in that, so that it's almost like it essentially works like a smart contract, where it takes multiple people to agree to whatever is going to happen. They don't have access to it fully. You can't sell it off on them, right. So that now you have no collateral for the loan that you have. So there is some stuff out there for that, but it's not very well developed. And obviously, for that to become mainstream, it takes an incredible amount of money to be able to do that. So this isn't something that's going to happen overnight. This is going to take companies slowly building up the ability to do that over time. I think you probably are more likely to see it adopted if you see the legacy banking system get involved and actually get into that game, and accepting Bitcoin as, now they're most likely going to want to hold it. They're most likely going to say, no, we'll hold it in, in safekeeping for you, and we'll give you cash in return for, you can borrow against it, and then when you pay your loan off, you get it back, kind of thing. But no, I don't think we're there yet, for sure.
It is an interesting, hypothetical question of how much, or what percent would you borrow against Bitcoin as collateral? So say you have a set amount of Bitcoin. It's like what percent of dollars or stable coin would you borrow of that collateral?
Yeah, I've thought about that. And so for me, it's probably in the 10% range, maybe 20 max.
Yeah.
Because
I was also going to say 20 seems safe.
Yeah.
And if you were higher than that, I would want to have a backup plan for liquidity to ensure you don't risk losing your collateral, because Bitcoin has had some pretty sharp declines in market price, and you don't want to get called on your collateral and have your collateral claimed.
And that's the danger there, because you would never be over leveraged on it, because you could never borrow more than 100% of it. So from a personal perspective, you're never going to, you're always covered with your collateral, but you're also in risk of, not having that collateral going forward and losing all of that wealth, asset. And so what you have to look at is and obviously this is going to depend as time goes on, that the Bitcoin that you hold is actually going to become worth more. So the amount is going to change, because as we go through our 4-year cycles, the drops become a higher and higher number, if that makes sense. So if we look and say, okay, well, if Bitcoin drops 50%, let's say it's $100,000, and I've borrowed $20,000, so that's 20%. If Bitcoin drops in half, drops down to $50,000 in value, I still have $30,000 of margin there, where I'm safe. And so it would be cutting it pretty close, but I could, in fact, borrow against another 20,000 to pay off the first 20,000, right? And still have another, or whatever. But I would be in a tight spot there, because what you really want to do it properly, the way that Michael Saylor describes it, is you would borrow against a certain amount. So let's say it's 100,000, you'd borrow 20,000. And let's say you do that for 1 year. So at the end of a year, you're required to pay back the 20,000 that you borrowed. Well, you borrowed it to do whatever you were going to do to it, right? Live off it, go to the Bahamas, buy a yacht, whatever. So the next year, you would borrow $40,000. 20 of that would go to pay off the original 20. And then the other 20, you have the same as you did the first year to live off of, or whatever. And then the following year, you'll borrow another 40,000. So the idea is that and then obviously there's interest on that. So it's going to be actually a little more than that, because you're going to have to pay off the interest. But to make it really simple, that's the idea. So it actually takes a significant amount of total collateral in that scenario to make it work, because you have to borrow double to pay off the original.
Right.
Okay, that system definitely depends on, I guess, either being willing to actually sell off your asset as sort of an estate settlement, maybe upon your death, or else you're going to need the price of that asset to keep climbing in order to let you to keep borrowing more money against it. But it sounds like one potential plan here is just that first option of your estate can settle it. The main object is borrowing against the asset, because you won't.
But assets appreciate, right? Assets always appreciate. And so the idea is that, well, sure. And obviously we see Bitcoin goes up and down and up and down. But if you base it on a 4-year cycle, so, hey, I borrow this much money for 4 years, generally the idea is that every 4 years, Bitcoin has appreciated. And all of this is based on that Bitcoin will always continue to appreciate. Now we're seeing, historically we've seen 20, 30, or a couple 100%, 100%, 200%, whatever, every 4 years increase. Well, that's not going to happen forever. That might happen in another 10 years or something like that. And maybe then it goes down, and maybe then it's only 5 or 10% a year going forward, or every 4 years. Right. So that will find itself, there will be some sort of spot there, and you'll say, well, this, and the system, if that's what happens, and people start loaning out money, dollars for Bitcoin as collateral, the market will regulate itself to make it worthwhile doing, or else that nobody will do it, which means nobody will make money, which means, you know what I mean? Like the market tends to find the way to be profitable. Those banks will find the way to make it profitable. But yeah, it is hinging on that Bitcoin. The price of Bitcoin will go up forever on average, but probably not at what rates we've seen in this early adoption phase. Eventually it gets to a spot where it's not going up the crazy amounts every 4 years.
So is what we're seeing with FTX, is that kind of just the free market making them shake out and try to solidify the options?
I mean, I guess that would be one perspective is, I guess when you have a bubble or an overreach or a bad loan, it's better for the free market for somebody to get burnt for making those bad decisions than for a bailout to happen, which is what the traditional system is. Doesn't matter if you make a bad decision, you're too big to fail, you're going to get bailout. So in the sense that, I guess it's relaying information, which is an important part of markets and pricing, then that aspect of it is there through this. And hopefully that it provides information to people so they don't make poor loaning or leveraging decisions. So maybe it'll save the next exchange that's involved in a similar business, because maybe they'll look at this and say, okay, we need to clean this and this and this up so that we don't go under the way they did.
So, interesting thing, and of course I've lost the tweet, so I can't quote it to you because, say again, Twitter's stupid. There's a bunch of different exchanges, generally considered to be the more sound exchanges. I think like Kraken was on that list, maybe, and I can't even remember. And of course, I have no idea how to find it. Basically, there's a whole bunch of these other exchanges that have come out and said, we're going to make our balance sheet or documents available to everyone to show that we are 100% backed.
Cool.
I think
to basically give confidence to their customers.
Yeah. I mean, it's, it could quickly seem like a downward spiral of the whole sector, and investors could totally lose confidence. I mean, I think the average consumer looking at this is just one more story that's like, people just lose everything when they invest in crypto.
Yeah. And
that's going to scare people off. So we definitely need companies showing what they've got backing things and how well, how tight a ship are they running? Right. That's something consumers should know, as well as not trusting them with significant sums of money. Because you wouldn't think in a pure exchange shouldn't have much risk associated with it. It's like they're providing a service, there's a swap, and they get a percentage fee. There's not a lot of risk in that model.
No, that's right.
Like it's only when you get into loaning and collateral and you're making perhaps leveraged investments with money you've borrowed or different things like this. That stuff can be a problem because you can lose some of the bets you make. I mean, that's part of higher risk investing. You can
That's
get
right.
really good returns, but some of them are going to backfire. You'll have to take losses.
Yeah.
It's definitely a reminder to me that looking at what projects you're considering investing in, digging into it a little bit more, and also just considering the projects that are more sound.
Mm-hmm.
Stay away from things that seem shaky or get rich quick. I mean, but really, like FTX at one point was buying things up, were they not? Like, I thought, based on what I knew and what I had seen, that FTX was pretty solid.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
well, and it does seem, like I say, if it's true that the U.S. FTX was not affected at all, it's 100% liquid. Well, it's so hard with these big billion dollar companies because they've got all these different components and stuff like that. That FTX USA is not the same as FTX.
A total separate legal entity, and so they don't owe the creditors of FTX International anything.
Right.
If you're FTX USA, something like that, so they can't get called on any of their assets.
Yep. So, yeah, I think for those who know and those who understand it, it strengthens the case for Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm.
But you're right, Dan. There's going to be a lot of society that's going to say that just lumps Bitcoin in with crypto and says, "Oh, it's just all the same. It's all a scam. It's all a Ponzi." And see, all these people keep losing money. This is, there was Luna, and then there was Coin or Celsius, and then there was FTX. Like this is just another one going down, and I'm never going to put my money in that. I'm going to stick with the good old American dollar. You
can throw on the washing machine.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess the other interesting note was, of course, the Bitcoin market price. So
yep.
It took a rather sharp slump, and I assume this is collateral having to be cashed out, or do you think this is just other investors panicking and dumping when they had no actual need to?
Yeah, I don't know, because it bounced back.
Yeah, this is what I want to see some actual analysis of in the coming weeks, and I hope it comes up in some of the Bitcoin podcasts I follow. So that would be an interesting data point. I know with Terra Luna, we saw Bitcoin price drop, but we know that they had Bitcoin as collateral that they were forced to sell.
That's
so
right.
There we can see an actual forced selling of Bitcoin. So I wonder if this is similar, where if there were forced cash outs of Bitcoin.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me. It wouldn't surprise me at all. And the price did drop quite dramatically, $7,000 or so Canadian. But
Canadian US.
It started to bounce back today, and has steadily been climbing its way back up again. See how maybe it'll go down, but
it recovered about half of what it lost in the last week.
Probably not quite.
Okay. So it's still in the buy zone.
Oh, it's always in the buy zone.
Oh yeah, it's always in the buy zone.
That was probably one of the more amusing things, is seeing the people who've been keeping powder, I guess, licking their chops and like, all right, 11,000. Like, I don't know if it's going to go down there, but then I didn't see this dip coming either, so you never know.
Yeah. So I'm going to put my tinfoil hat on here. As a non-conspiracy theorist, I'm going to play devil's advocate with the conspiracy theory side of this. This was actually a move by the WEF or the SEC an inside job to get more regulation passed?
I was about to comment.
Because breaking news, the SEC launches investigation into FTX CEO.
Yeah. There's been a few things. I got to look into the library and SEC court because I saw a little bit of a rumblings that.
Oh, that's right. Library lost their court case.
Mm-hmm.
So their token is ruled as a security. Or did they accept it was a security? No, I don't think they did. And this was the issue, was that they had been selling it themselves. And security regulations are that you can't sell your own securities or something like that. I'm not very familiar with it.
Yeah, I just saw them post that they had to lick their wounds, and I'm like, oh, I'm gonna bookmark that one to look at for the show. Yeah, so that was. I mean, I was gonna comment that, and then also that I've seen in our crypto chats group that was one of the questions. Could this be a WEF, trying to actually just get more regulations passed? Because we've seen things in Ontario here in Canada that are kind of interesting on that.
My reaction to that would be no, this is not some complicated plot, because it's always easier to just pass regulations than make some complicated excuse for it. Based on actual events, I mean, they just make complicated excuses out of thin air if they really need them. So I don't see why they would put in the effort. I think the simple answer is regulation is coming, and there's a lot of jockeying around who gets to do what. I know Gary is it Gensler? He's said a few times, I believe, that he wants some bigger role in regulating Bitcoin, and yet the SEC does not regulate commodities, and Bitcoin is a commodity.
Right.
So there's a big question about what he means when he he says things that indicates he wants more power over it, because it's currently a completely different department.
Yeah. I think that by and large, government is mostly opportunist. And so they don't, I'm not so conspiracy theorist that they manufacture these things, but when they come along and inevitably happen, and maybe they kind of foresee that this is a possibility it's going to happen sometimes, though I don't know if I want to give them that much credit. They jump on it and they say, see, people are losing money. We need to protect our citizens. We need to regulate this so that, we, the government, who know what is best for the people, can protect them from their incompetence. And so that's what you're seeing, with these regulations like the one in Ontario and about different cryptos and risk investment. And even after this FTX thing, the White House has come out and said, we need to regulate cryptocurrencies.
Yeah. I think my response to the tinfoil hat idea about it is that I think this is just human mistakes in a very high stakes game. And like you said, the government is just jumping all over it. Based on the tweets that the CEO was putting out, it seems like he had a very, very key role in overseeing most everything that went on at FTX. So, he's even just saying, I flubbed up and, I should have been on top of it. And so that's and I guess I don't know if he runs both FTX USA and FTX worldwide or not, but I would imagine he's at least got a pretty big spoon in the pot for the worldwide one if he's tweeting that stuff. But USA is big enough. My goodness, the world worldwide one, those are very high stakes. So
Yeah.
just a little bit of a misstep in human function, and it's getting jumped on.
It's always interesting, and I haven't been around long enough to track a lot of this stuff, but it's always interesting to see the trends. Just getting back to kind of Bitcoin and the price drop. And I'm useless at trying to read charts and look at those sorts of things, but people who do that and follow that stuff and have been following it for a lot longer than I have, they see the trends, and it seems like there is a trend of, well, around this time on this year of a 4-year cycle is when the bottom hits, and then we climb out, and go into a bull market and all of that sort of stuff. So it's really interesting to see, almost like clockwork, some of this stuff happen. And yeah, it's I find it quite fascinating. I read one guy in particular who seems to be pretty good at reading the market and has made some predictions that were all pretty accurate. As accurate as you can be in this sort of thing. But yeah, he basically says, like, this can't last forever, and the huge sell-off from FTT, of course, that's like the end of the bear market. So this is the bottom, and then the second part of the cycle starts, and we're going to have this slow accumulation, slow price rise, over the next year, till we start rolling into the accumulation or the price rise going into the halving.
Yeah, I wonder where new money is going to come into Bitcoin from, though, without some kind of positive news.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, a lot of the last run up, there was a lot of positive news. It was a very wild bull run and a lot of excitement around it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, if there's not something kind of kicks that off,
right?
It's like, how do you even get started? Because all the dedicated Bitcoin people are already, plugging away with the hodl. So,
well, that's right. I mean, in 2014 to 18 or whatever that was, I guess it would have been 16 to 20. That was like the alt kind of bull run. And this time around, it was kind of like the first part of this cycle was sort of the DeFi bull run. You know what I mean? Like, there's been themes on those 4-year cycles of things that have really driven interest in the market, even if it was misplaced as far as what people should have been investing in. It did drive interest, and people bought Bitcoin just because it was part of the market. So you're right. It is interesting to see if there will be something else now that will be a sort of a signature feature of the next run. But
could it be Bitcoin itself?
Yeah, that's true. Maybe people will have a reaction to all of this bad news and say, just gonna go with a safe bet, which is Bitcoin. But anyway, that's probably enough of a breakdown on that. Hopefully that made some sort of sense. But
I was just about to say, seems like a pretty good wrap up. You even touched on a few little news stories in alongside of our main news story breakdown. But if you've made it this far and you want to check us out on any of our other platforms, we're on YouTube and Odysee, and best place to listen to us is fountain.fm. You can earn some Bitcoin while you're listening there, but we're also on iTunes, Google Play or podcasts, and Spotify as well. If you want to send us some feedback, send us something that you want us to chat about or give reaction to, our thoughts on, the best way is emailing us at changingnormal@protonmail.com, or you can comment on a video or tweet at us. Clearly, we're phenomenal tweeters because we can always find what we're looking for on that platform. But our handle on Twitter is at changing_normal. And send us a boostergram on Fountain if you want to get a comment out there. But anyway, with that, thanks for listening. Remember, be courageous, take small steps, and change your normal every day.